Morning, Julia.
Good morning. How are you?
How are you
I'm
this
good. I'm
morning?
excited to talk to Tiffany this morning. We're constantly reposting her excellent information on Facebook to our page, and I'm looking forward to visiting with her this morning.
Well, her mantra is our mantra, right? Free
It
the
is.
children.
It is.
Yes.
I love it.
So I'm excited to see. And actually, Tiffany was sweet to have me on her radio broadcast. So it's nice to turn the tables and get to ask Tiffany questions today.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to bring Tiffany on. She's in our green room waiting. Good morning,
Good
Tiffany.
morning. How are you, ladies?
We are good. How is it going in Tennessee this morning?
It's going well.
Is it rainy there?
No, it's not, but I think it's going to. I think we have storms coming today.
I was going to say, because I think what we had just is going down I-40 toward
Down the
you.
road.
So,
Right, right.
yeah, more rain.
Yes.
Put a smile on.
Well, it always rains when I have to go to the grocery store, so there's that.
Yes. I did that one time in the pouring rain and I vowed never to do that again. I was just going to leave my cart there. I'm done.
I know it's
Okay, it is so good to have you on this morning. And so what I'd like to do this morning before we do anything else is I'd like you to talk a little bit about for your children, and I'd like to talk about how you got started. What gave you the impetus to do this? Just kind of give us your background so everybody knows a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I was a former public school teacher before I really got involved in all of this education business outside of the public school system. So I'm a little bit of a renegade, I guess you could say, in that respect, or that's how I was seen when I first jumped into this world. But I was very much a believer in the public school system for many years. I went to public school as a child and through high school and graduated and went to a public university to be none other than a public school teacher. And so I did that, and I was actually a tenured public school teacher when we were seeing some things that was happening in the school system where I was working that we weren't happy about. I wasn't happy about. I laugh about it now because I remember I was pregnant with our third child, and I had said if I had not resigned when I did, I would have had an organ removed just so I could have gotten out of that place.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh, gosh.
there were a lot of things that were going on with curriculum and things that I was seeing in the school system and things that were happening to our older children that I just wasn't pleased with, and my husband certainly wasn't pleased with. So when we had our third child, my husband made the decision actually that we were going to pull them out and homeschool. And I wasn't on board. I mean, I had been fully indoctrinated into the belief that, when your children reach a certain age, you send them to school, you send them to the experts to educate your children. And that's all I knew. Where we lived, there weren't any homeschoolers that I knew of, or there weren't many. And all of the misconceptions that so many people had about homeschooling, I had those misconceptions too, because I'd been trained to believe that, the professionals, the teachers, were the ones that were the only ones that were capable of properly educating.
Even though you were a public school teacher.
Yes, even though I was a public school teacher. So, we my husband made the decision, and we laugh about that and say that, I submitted to him, and he says that's the only time. Not true, but he likes to throw that around. We get a chuckle out of that. So we tentatively stepped into homeschooling. We started by pulling our oldest child out at the time and started homeschooling her. We left our son in, and that was a mistake. If you're watching this and considering homeschooling, and you're going to remove your children from the school system, do it all at the same time. Don't leave one in. I'm a walking encyclopedia of don't do it, don't do what I did. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started For Your Children. But long before I started For Your Children, I worked with a lot of local families who the public school system wasn't working for them, and they wanted to pull their children out. They didn't know how to do it. They knew that I had been in the public school system and we were homeschooling. So a lot of them would come to me and I would help them navigate that process. And then throughout the years, I worked with our local homeschool community. I still work with our local homeschool community. I founded a Christian service project group for homeschoolers. That's been around. This will be our 18th year with that.
Oh, wow.
I opened several. I helped with one local homeschool support group for a while. Then I founded my own local homeschool support group, and taught classes, co-op classes, and offered enrichment opportunities and book clubs. So I've done all of those things. But what I started seeing about 4 to 5 years ago is that many homeschoolers didn't really realize or weren't really involved in the political side of preserving our freedoms. And we were having legislation that was beginning to be introduced in Tennessee that was very concerning. And I saw that as something that our local homeschool community needed to get involved in. And we also needed to educate as many parents as possible about why the initiatives that were coming down the pipe were dangerous. So, and then of course, on a larger scale, when COVID hit, we had like a 230 something percent uptick in the families that were joining our local homeschool group that I had founded. So we were reaching like 1,000 families.
Holy cow.
Yes, it was huge. And it was just too much work. So I felt like I needed, and I was trying to disseminate information to that group, but also to larger groups. So I decided to start For Your Children to be able to reach families all over the nation so that we could tie into one another, and organizations could tie into one another so that we could share much needed information. I've shared a lot of ropes information over on my For Your Children page. So I keep watch really of what's going on, when it comes to parental rights and homeschooling across the United States, because, as they say, what happens in one portion of the nation always affects the rest of the nation. So I've kind of made it my mission to make sure that parents are educated and that parents have the information that they need to actively participate in protecting and preserving their parental rights and homeschool freedoms. And then I offer encouragement and support. And about almost a year ago, I was offered the opportunity to get involved with radio, and my For Your Children radio show started from that. It just focuses on education, and I've had the amazing opportunity to bring on many wonderful guests from all over the United States, including you, Jeannie. Her show was fantastic. And we just focus on education. And so that has been a wonderful platform to be able to reach, more people and to educate more people. But I'm really passionate now about training parents, encouraging parents, teaching parents that you are equipped, you are the experts, and encouraging them to just make the leap into teaching and discipling your own children. So that's one of the other missions For Your Children. We have a lot of missions.
Well, I want to back up to something that you said, because we had Monica Klein on Wednesday, and she was a wonderful interview, but what she said was just horrific. And I think Julie and I are still having PTSD a little bit. It was it was concerning. So I was a public school teacher. You were a public school teacher. I know that when we pulled our kids out, mainly it was the oldest son in second grade coming home basically crying and telling me, please take me out, please take me out. He was just getting bullied from his teacher, which was then giving the green light for, other kids to bully him. But it wasn't just that. I mean, we saw stuff in our daughter's school, in our daughter's schoolroom, global warming stuff. This was all the way back in like 2012, probably, 2010. Global warming, how the Native Americans, white people damaged Native Americans, how, I mean, it was just becoming so stilted and gross. And I was like, I never taught like this. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And that was a big reason for me to just finally go, no, everybody out. We're done with this. So what were you seeing as a public school teacher that bothered you that much?
One specific, well, we had bullying issues with our oldest child as well. And we also had issues with, some of her teachers. But one thing that really struck me, and I shared this story over in the virtual book club that we're hosting right now. We're over on For Your Children. We're reading Crimes of the Educators by Samuel Blumenfeld and Alex Newman. And we're doing a virtual book club about that. And I shared this particular story, and this I still think about this all the time today. When I was reading this book, it really came home to me. The last 3 years that I taught in the public school system, I was a kindergarten teacher. And during that period of time, the district was getting ready to adopt a new reading program. And I think at the time, because it's been a while, I've been out now. Let's see, our younger son is 20. So I've been out 20 years. And so this would have been 20 years ago, probably 22, 23 years ago. And I was chosen as one of the kindergarten teachers from our particular school to go to a textbook committee meeting where we were going to be voting on the particular curriculum that we were going to choose. And at that point in time, we were using a very thorough, comprehensive phonics program, and it worked. And so we wanted to keep that particular program. So we went, and I can't remember how long I want to say we might have been there for 2 days, but there were 11 of us, I believe, total at the time. All of us, except for one teacher, voted to keep that particular phonics program. And they wound up going with something different. And then the one that they chose was an absolute disaster. It was not phonics. The kids did not learn to read. It was an epic disaster. And we had warned them, and I thought, why would they choose something that the majority of us, only one voted against it? Why would they choose this particular curriculum to use? And then I started researching curriculum and why districts made decisions that they made. And that really bothered me because I knew that these kids were not going to learn to read. And then what was going to happen? And that's what's happening and has happened for decades, across our nation. We're pumping out, and the public school system is pumping out barely, functionally literate kids. I mean, the comprehension level is just absolutely ridiculous. And I watched a lot of those things happening in the school system. I remember that, retention, if the kids couldn't pass, if they couldn't read or they weren't really ready to go on to the next grade. And it's so funny even talking about this because I don't believe in any of this now, but then I did. And those were the standards that you had to operate under. And I can remember that these children I knew were going to be pushed on into another grade. They were going to be miserable. They were going to be in trouble because they weren't going to be able to do the work, which, by the way, wasn't developmentally appropriate anyway for those children during that period of time. But everything was, we can't do this because our numbers won't look good. We can't do this because, the state says we're only allowed to do X, Y, and Z. So it became really clear to me that we weren't in the business of educating the children. We were just there to make sure numbers were correct, and we received the monies that we were going to be getting from the government. It wasn't about the kids. And that was becoming more and more clear to me. And another thing that I was seeing at the time was the push for parents wanting their children to be able to start kindergarten at age 4. And I would conference with the parents and I would say, listen, if it were and I wasn't supposed to do this either, but when I would have a conference with them, I would say, listen, if this were my child, I wouldn't start them until 6. They're not developmentally ready for this. They're going to be at school all day. They're going to have to sit in a desk. They're going to have to do all this work. But a lot of the parents were very anxious to get their kids enrolled during the school system because then they wouldn't have to pay for a babysitter. So I was seeing that trend. And then I was also seeing the trend of lots and lots of children being diagnosed and medicated for ADHD, ADD. And so that trend was really coming through in education as well during that time. So it was a culmination of a lot of things that I was seeing. And again, like you said, the bullying was intensive. And it didn't just come from the students, it came from the teachers as well. So there were a lot of issues. And I tell parents all the time, if you really knew what was going on inside the walls of those schools, you would want to get your children out of there. It's just not a safe environment. And I think a lot of parents are under the impression that it is. And if they looked at the statistics, I write monthly. I'm a monthly contributor to the Borough Pulse. And there, all of my articles focus on education. And I wrote an article called "Public Schools, Are They Safe?" And I was recently asked to be on another podcast because the person that hosts that podcast happened upon that particular article. And she was absolutely shocked at the statistics that were listed in that article in terms of abuse and the fact that public schools can self-report. And just recently, within the last couple of weeks, I guess, I had a former school board member of a neighboring district, and this particular district is considered the gold standard in our area because it's comprised of a lot of school systems with a lot of wealthy families there. And this former school board member sent me all these documents about an incident that had happened at their particular school where the administrators of that school did not want to turn in an incident that had happened. They wanted to handle it internally. And it was what had happened was there was a janitor that was watching children and teachers while they were using the restroom. He was hiding up in the crawl space and looking down into the restroom. And when I received that information in the FOIA reports and I started reading into that, it was clear from the reports that the administrators wanted to handle it internally and they didn't want to get law enforcement involved.
Wow.
So everything that you've said, I was just sitting there rolling my eyes at everything that you said, because everything that you've said is something that I experienced as a teacher myself, or, that I knew of things that were going on, even at the time. And I have to say, we were involved in the Common Core fight here in Oklahoma, trying to get it, pulled out of law. And it absolutely struck me when you said, why did they adopt this program that only one teacher voted for and the rest of us said, no, it's terrible. Why would you adopt that? And then later on you go on, and Julia, I could see her writing down, because we take like snippets out of Julia was like, I've got this snippet right here. But what you said was worthy of a soundbite. It is that you learn just like I learned. It isn't about education.
No.
It isn't about that.
No.
It's about really just money. I mean, that's all it is.
And control. Period. Yeah, money and control.
Well, right, because the control comes with the more money you can build up, the bigger the mountain of money that you sit on, the more control you have.
Absolutely.
And Julia, what are you so fond about saying that legislators say about superintendents?
Oh, but they're the most politically powerful person in any community. And that was by design by John Dewey 100 years ago.
So how is that? I mean, and we could go into that for ages, but again, the other thing that I wanted to back up to is reading. There is a video on our YouTube channel that I did about the difference between phonics and sight reading. And it's unfortunate to me, but we've had the same problem here in Oklahoma. We actually had a head of the Oklahoma House Education Committee that wrote a bill to make it illegal to use anything but phonics in teaching reading. And it doesn't matter that that's in law. Parents don't know that it's in law, because we have an education law book that's this thick with laws. So who knows what's in them? But they're definitely.
And the schools don't seem at all interested in whether or not something is in law. They're going to do what they want to do.
Exactly.
When we just passed 1775, the Oklahoma City Public Schools superintendent just said, no, we're not going to do that. He said it.
Yeah. Well,
So,
we have a no CRT law here in Tennessee, and it's being implemented. It's been implemented. It's being implemented across the state, and there's
Yes.
really no way to police that. And
No.
they just rebrand all these things. And
Yep.
speaking about phonics, when you spoke on that, a lot of schools now, what they're doing, phonics, because all of the research and there's been a lot of chatter about it, they'll say that they're going to implement phonics. But if you look, and I know this is happening in the county where we live, if you look, phonics is just kind of an aside. That's not their main focus. It's just like little snippets of phonics, but it's not intensive and it's not systematic. And of course, if you're not using an intensive systematic phonics system, then the kids are not going to be able to read. But they do that to placate, I think.
well, I do
Right.
too. And because the sad thing about it is parents don't know the difference.
Right, exactly.
And, we had, when my daughter was learning how to read, and here's the other thing that just kills me about public schools, and Tiffany, I know you know this 100%, and you're just going to be like, yeah, that there's always something new on the horizon.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter if what we're doing right now works, like is
Right.
the best thing since sliced bread, something new.
Absolutely.
We got to try something new. And so what
So
you
they
end
can
up
tell
doing
more.
is yeah, exactly. It's whoever's offering the most incentives for their
Exactly.
curriculum package is the reason why we keep changing these things. And so we're not going to say with anything that works, because that's not going to buy anybody any money. It's not
Right.
going to make them, give them more power.
Yep.
But I think what parents need to know, and you as a kindergarten and a reading teacher, I think are so equipped to explain to parents. And one of the things that we do like to do here on our podcast is help parents, identify where problems are.
Mm-hmm.
How does a parent know that their child is not being taught phonics and they're being taught the whole word reading method? What are some red flags for parents to look for?
Some red flags that I would recommend looking for are if the teachers are sending home word lists for the children to memorize. I know that was going on for a while in the school systems. Also, if they're expected to essentially memorize the little books that the schools will send home, the book Crimes of the Educators does a fantastic job. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend parents reading that particular book, because it really goes into detail about what you should be looking for and how you can identify this. But mainly, if the child is not being taught to decode and sound out words, then they're not implementing a phonics program. And it shouldn't be just a worksheet every now and then. I know that, if you really look at, they called it the whole language method, the sight word method. I hate the term whole language, because what I see as whole language is not the sight word method. When I think of whole language, I think of more of the Charlotte Mason method, and homeschoolers understand that. You take a book or high quality, living book, and you read that book, and then you branch off and learn, different subjects from that book. Like you might, if you're reading a book about a specific time period, you might study, how they grew their food during that time period, what they ate, what was going on during that time period as far as inventions or things of that nature. But this particular term, whole language, is specifically referring to teaching children to read by sight. And so they would do things like, how do you think this book is going to end? Make up your own idea about how you think that it should end. and it doesn't matter if the word says, yes, it doesn't matter if the word is puppy, dog is close enough. Just plug it in. So, those types of things, children have to learn that a letter is a symbol, and that symbol makes a sound. And if they don't learn those principles, they're never going to have a fluid ability to read. They're never going to be able to decode words. We all know, if you look at, and then there are exceptions to the rule. And then if you have a strong phonics background, you can learn those exceptions. It will help you read. I have read so many. Well, here's an example of that. So Rockefeller, if you know anything about the history of education, one thing that this book pointed out to me that I read was the fact that, Rockefeller had all this money, and he sent 4 of his sons to this progressive college. Okay. And all 4 of them wound up having some form of dyslexia. And so they went
Wow.
on to state, they were rich, so they could hire people to read for them or do what they needed to do. But it was a stumbling block for them their entire adulthood. And they used this whole language or this sight word reading method at that college. That's when it was just coming on the scene. So, you see, we have a terrible problem with illiteracy here in the United States. And if you go back, it used to be a joke. We live in Tennessee. When I was teaching in the public school system, it was a joke, Jenny, exactly what you just said. We would say, well, whatever's going on in California will be here next, because they're trends in education, and they would start in that area of the United States, and then they would filter over into Tennessee. No matter that they were an epic failure out there, they still came this way. Our school system still adopted, those textbooks or standards or whatever it was that they were implementing there. And we're not, the dumbing down is almost complete. The kids, yeah.
I completely agree with that. I was absolutely shocked. I grew up like Julia. Julia and I are like besties just because our moms were the same mom, essentially. Right. They're both English teachers and, had these long histories in public schools.
Right.
And so I was brought up with a literature English teacher mother.
Right.
And so the way she spoke and the things that I was forced to read, whether I wanted to or not, the way I learned to diagram sentences, all that kind of stuff made a huge difference to me. Now as when I write, people say, oh my gosh, you're a great writer. Well, it's not that. I think we're not teaching people how to write anymore. So people don't know how to do it. I literally I had to go back east to where my mom lived. And I was sitting with my cousins and their kids, and we were talking about some things. These kids, one of them just graduated from high school. The other one is getting ready to be a sophomore. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them can use a verb in a correct tense in a sentence. Neither one of them. I could have went, and I can't always use it, but I could have went, something like that. I cannot express how when people misuse a verb in a tense in a sentence, it's like my teeth. Julia does the same. Our teeth just, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Mm-hmm. Why is it we're turning out these kids? And look at a television program like the news and look at the chyron on the bottom, the string. Tell me one time that you don't see a misspelling or a misuse of a verb in a sentence.
Well, and I'll share this with you too. A local librarian told me this once. This is what they said to me. They said, well, we have been instructed by some of the high schools not to order books for them. Like they wanted the abridged versions of the classics because the kids can't comprehend classic literature anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Well, years ago, Julie and I both were on this one. Remember the taking cursive out of the curriculum? Right. And we were infuriated by that because if you take cursive out of the curriculum and you don't teach kids to write cursive, they can't read any documents that were written before 15 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And so how people don't understand there is a purpose behind what they're doing right now. Yes. And it's not to educate. It is to specifically miseducate. Yes. So that's specifically what schools are meant to do.
Exactly.
It's simply not meant to educate children. It's meant to instill a social belief system in them. That it is not meant to educate them. And all you would have to do if you have 4 brain cells, rub them together, listen to what kids say today. Mm-hmm. They all sound like they're talking in text message. Mm-hmm. Look at the chyron of your news report. You're going to find misspellings, wrong sentence structure. I mean, honestly, ladies, this is it's gross and disgusting. And why people don't care about this makes no sense to me at all.
That's the most frustrating part to me, is trying to get people to wake up, trying to get your lawmakers, your representatives to listen to this information and to understand that this is all being done by design. And the thing about it is, Jenny, they're not secretive about this. It's all there in black and white.
Exactly. They tell us everything they're doing.
Exactly. They tell us. And people want to say, "Oh, that's crazy. That sounds Orwellian. It's a conspiracy theory." And I'm like, "Well, have you read the documentation? It's right there. UNESCO is very clear in their 2030 agenda. I mean, they're not hiding anything."
Well, I think it goes back to, so you were saying, and hey, please don't think I've been like this my whole entire life. My husband loves to harken back to the days when I was actually a liberal and had a bumper sticker on the back of my car that said something like, "Why are we having bake sales for schools when the military's paying for bombers?" or something. So don't think, I just, I've been like this my whole life.
Exactly.
So what caused you as a teacher in the system, when you were saying, and you even said this a minute ago, you said, "Well, I used to believe like that." What was the thing that kind of made you go, bing?
I think for me, the thing was, I had children, number one, my own children. So I was watching, all of this unfold. And then I'm a questioner by nature, much to most people's dismay. I don't typically take things at face value. So I do my research. And so when I started seeing these things, I fully feel like it was conviction, from God, number one. I give him credit for that, because I listened to that still small voice, something's wrong here. And then I launched into research mode, and I really did a deep dive into the history of education, because they don't teach you that when you're going to college to be a teacher.
Wouldn't that be great if they would?
Yes. Well, I said, had I known, I think a lot of people think that I'm chastising them for not knowing this information. But what I'm trying to tell them is I was that person before, I arrived at where I am today, and I'm still learning. So this isn't you're guilty as charged verdict. This is, hey, listen to this and start doing your own research and educate yourself on what's really going on. And I think that's it. People have been so conditioned within the system to just go along, to get along. You don't say anything. This is just how it is. This is what you do. Your kids turn 5, you send them off to school, you turn them over to the government. That's just how it is. Right. But if I had known from the very beginning, prior to me even making the decision to be a public school teacher, had I known then what I know now, I would have never wanted to have been a part of that system. But I didn't know. So when you know better, you should do better. So my mission now is to try to educate as many people as possible so they don't do what I did. So they don't participate in that.
So two things that I want to follow up on you. And I know I keep going back to your public school, experience even more than what you're doing right now. But I do think it's super handy, because I do think that I don't know, we only know one conservative teacher that speaks out, Sandy Harrell. She's, been one of our friends for a long time, but we just don't have conservative teachers coming forward and saying, enlightening parents or trying to do, that kind of thing. So that's kind of why I'm sticking on this. I think parents really need to have that experience, like with Monica Klein, what she used to do. Did you feel like when you were teaching, did you feel like parents weren't going to come forward because they were afraid that their kids were going to be made to pay, the price for what they were saying? Do you feel like that was an issue?
Yes, I do feel like that's an issue. And I also feel like parents have been conditioned to believe, most parents have themselves been a product of of government schools, of the public school system. Right. So they've been taught not to question the experts, which are the teachers and the administrators. And, those environments can be quite intimidating for parents. It's not comfortable for most parents to come into the school and have an issue, want to speak to them about something that's going on. And oftentimes it's not met with, it's not welcome. So I think that's one reason why, parents kind of drop off and don't make their voices heard. I had the same conversation about school board meetings not long ago. I was in a group and something came up about school board meetings and, will parents never come? And this is one of the reasons why I believe that parents don't come to school board meetings. The parents come, if they want to speak, they're only allowed, 3 minutes or so to speak. Sometimes they even get cut off during those meetings. I have found in my own personal experience when I have addressed our local school board about issues that it seems that several of the majority, I would say, of our school board members, they don't care what you have to say. They don't want to hear it. I provided them with informational packets. I don't think that the majority of them even bothered to read those packets. So I think parents know that within that system as a whole, most of the time, parents' voices aren't heard. They're just going to do what they want to do anyway.
Well, and our school board members in the state of Oklahoma are trained by OSSBA, which tells them do whatever your superintendent tells you to do.
Exactly.
That's the gist of it. And
exactly.
And they spend lots of time and money to train them in that philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think, I do think parents are waking up. A lot of parents are waking up and they're looking for other options and they're trying to decide what they can do. We've got to, I hate to use the term re-education because if you know what we know, that's not a very nice term there. But right. I really do think that the mass populace needs to be re-educated to believe that they are capable of assuming the responsibility of training and discipling and teaching and educating their own children. And that those people that you're sending, and I'm speaking about the system as a whole, because I know that people say, well, there are Christian school teachers, in the system. They're not doing these things. It doesn't matter if they're doing these things or not. They're participating in a system that's propagating these ideals.
Right.
And so you have to do what they tell you to do. You're not, you're participating in a system that is intent on the globalization of education. That's what they're doing. You're participating in a system that's promoting communism. That's what you're doing. Those are the harsh facts. Not everyone wants to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. I had to come to terms with the fact that I had been a part of that system, that I had participated in it. But again, I will say, when you know better, then you have to do better, or you should want to do better. And so the goal is to educate as many people as possible. This is what's going on. And then this is how you can get out of that system. But it's getting them to want to hear the information, because what I have found is the information that Rope shares, the information that Free Your Children shares, for a lot of people, it's offensive to them. It's really not offense. It's really conviction, because they know what we're sharing is right, but they know that if they hear it, then they're going to have to do something with that information. And they don't want to have to do the hard things. They don't want to have to make sacrifices or do the hard work or look at things in a different way to come up with a different solution. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is the fact that our nation, by design, we have created a nation of consumers. So you have to work to buy more stuff, so parents think, I can't do that. We have to work. Well, there are thousands of homeschool parents that work. They do it effectively. They've done it effectively for decades. There are tons of single parents that homeschool. They've done it for decades. They've done it effectively. If you want it bad enough, you'll do it. If it's important enough, you'll find a way. If it's not, you'll find an excuse.
Right.
Let me ask you ladies a question, if you don't mind. How receptive are your lawmakers, your representatives in Oklahoma to the message that you share?
Well, that's a really good.
We have a few legislators that are actually there to try to preserve rights and to do the right thing, that are there on principles.
Mm-hmm.
They are outvoted every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the majority of them are not.
You've got to figure out who's playing the game and who has a good spiel
Right.
and who is actually there on principle.
Exactly.
So when people barely know the legislators and they're going to go into effect change, I'm like, yeah, good luck with that.
Exactly.
Well,
But
and I
the,
think we talked about this when I was on your show, when you
Mm-hmm.
invited me on your show, and we talked about the fact that the problem that we're having right now is the two-party system.
Yeah.
The communists were very excited about the two-party system because basically all you have to do is clothe yourself in a different uniform
Mm-hmm.
and you get to be the other party.
Right.
So it's just a very destructive way of doing things. And so what we have right now is we have a lot of people who are lulled into believing that Oklahoma is a red state and that Oklahoma has a Republican majority. And so everything is all hunky-dory and just fine, and we don't have to worry about anything. But what's actually been happening, and what I've shown, with a study I did on dark money in elections, we're actually having people buy elections in terms of finding money to put up candidates that are not Republican, but will put an R by their name. And that's really what we have, and what we have.
Yeah,
Do what?
some of them think they're Republicans, but they are not the sharpest tack. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They're maneuverable. They're manageable.
Yeah. We have the same situation in Tennessee, I think, and we have a lot of people. I don't know how it is in Oklahoma, but we have a mass exodus of people moving here from liberal states. And so they believe that, Tennessee is going to be, this promised land. And then they get here. And if you look at a lot of the legislation that has been introduced in the past, just this last session, it's very nefarious. It has roots that go all the way back to exactly what we're discussing here. And I have seen numerous pieces of legislation that are seeking to assert parental rights, homeschool freedoms, and that's right here, in the state that everyone thinks is so red. And just recently, I've had lots of parents reach out to me with Free Your Children who were considering moving here to Tennessee, and they're asking about the homeschool laws in Tennessee. And when I explain it to them, they say that's worse than where we live now. We don't want to we're trying to escape this. We don't want to, move to another state where it's going to be even worse, or, there's going to be a threat, to our homeschool freedoms or to our parental rights. And that is definitely what we're fighting here in Tennessee.
So I'm going to read you something. So close your ears, Jules. She sent this to me. We have the head of the House Education Committee, Rhonda Baker. And she's a nice lady, and we've tried to work with her before, but she doesn't. Yeah, and Julia's known her for years.
All my children.
Yeah, but she doesn't listen to a word we say. She smiles and nods, and so Julia sent us something, and this is from our House Education chairman. This is her page, Rhonda Baker. I had the honor of attending the Southern Legislative Conference in Charleston, South Carolina, and being elected by my legislative colleagues from the Southern region as the upcoming chairman of the Education Committee. I was able to tour a school of innovation, hear from numerous speakers, including the superintendent of public instruction from South Carolina, former Congressman Trey Gowdy, and current Governor McMaster's. Number one, that's South Carolina. What the hell does that have to do with Oklahoma? Why are you there? What are you bringing back? Then she goes on to say, the work we have done as a legislative body in Oklahoma in the education arena is being recognized on a national stage, and I'm proud to be part of the progress. Well, at least she admits she's a progressive, right? I mean, at least she admits she's a progressive.
They have ushered in, even after we told them the community schools, which is the exact John Dewey model, proudly so, and the Senate vice chair of education, when we gave them the information, he said, I don't see Karl Marx behind any bushes.
He wasn't jumping out from behind a bush. Yeah.
Well, It's very ironic, Jenny, that you read that because you said innovative schools in that, correct?
Yeah.
I just pinned an article for the Borough Pulse because Tennessee has adopted the whole school, whole child model. I'm going to be going into detail next month in an article that I'm going to pin about that. But our governor allocated $500 million to the innovative school model. And I spoke extensively about this, how detrimental it is, what's behind it. And like I said, some people are starting to wake up, but this is something that the conservatives in our state are proud of.
Well, but don't forget, it was the conservatives who backed Common Core, a
Exactly.
national one world
Exactly.
curriculum.
Yes.
Now they're backing this innovative schools, which is a national one world curriculum.
Absolutely.
These people don't understand. It even says
Yes.
it's a one world curriculum, and they're all like, this is great.
Exactly.
I'm so happy to be part of this progress. These people are exactly what, and I'm talking about Rhonda Baker here as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Chairman, but this is the way it is. Karl Marx, no, it wasn't Marx that used to call them useless or useful idiots.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who it was.
Stalin.
Huh?
Stalin. That was Stalin.
Oh, it was Stalin. That's right. You wouldn't know. I'll have to tell you later what I thought you said. Yes, it was Stalin, but these people are useful idiots. They go out and I'm happy to be part of this progress. I'm doing all of this, and they're ushering in one world government while they're going around in their communities going, we don't want one world government. We're going to stand strong against that. What do? You just want to
I know. It's so frustrating. And I have been holding local seminars to try to educate our representatives and our lawmakers. And we have had a few attend, but we've had more that have not been interested in hearing the information.
They have paid to not hear the information.
Exactly. I had a guest on one of my radio shows, and she said, well, they get paid to dance with the ones that brought them.
Yes.
And that's so true. They're not going to cross. They might say that they care about children, but they care about politics more. That's the underlying fact there. They may truly care about children, but what do you care about more? Politics or the children? Because if you care about children, you should want to hear this information and educate yourself. And I tell people, Jenny and Julia, I'm certain you do the same. Listen to the information. Then take what I have said and go back and research it. You don't have to believe what I say. You can go research it yourself.
That's what we've always said. And this is where I want to stop you, because this is the perfect jumping off point for what we talked about before we went on. So these people essentially are getting paid to push this garbage, and they can say, no, I'm not. But who's funding your campaign?
Exactly.
Who? That's one thing. Who's taking you out? Who are the lobbyists that are influencing you? So don't tell me you're not getting paid. That's just sincerely idiocy.
Right.
And who's sending you to South Carolina and putting a crown on your head?
That's right. Well, we had representatives in Tennessee that took an all expense paid trip to Turkey. And
we have too.
Yeah. And, there were tons. It was all over the United States that these representatives went, and, nothing.
Well,
the guy that was allegedly funding that trip has charter school networks all over the United States.
Yes, that's right. We have one right up the street from the state capitol.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the things like the Southern Legislative Conference, which, Rhonda Baker is so excited she got crowned queen over in education. It's those organizations that are pushing out this crap.
Yes.
Because they're the national organizations and they push it down. But what I was going to say was, you explain to me, how do you pay for your radio broadcast?
It's all by sponsorships, donations. A lot of people don't understand that being on the radio isn't free. I don't just get to go sit down at the radio or produce a show and put it on the air. You have to pay for those spots, and it's typically X amount of dollars a minute. And so that's how the radio show gets to make it to the air. And, the information that I put out there is information to help empower parents and families. And, I've been very blessed and honored to have a multitude of guests come on my show that are very good at what they do, that have a wealth of information to share. And then after the shows air, excuse me, they are uploaded to my Spotify channel. So if you've missed it while it's airing live, you can go to my For Your Children Spotify and go back and listen to Jenny's show and all the other guests that have been on, and hear what they have to say. And I highly encourage everyone to do that, because the information there is just crucial. And that's my goal, is to educate as many. We need a mass education of the mass populace, so to speak, because most people do not know that this is going on. They do not know why we have what we have today in education. So yeah, I think that lots of times my ministry, For Your Children, there's a reason why I didn't go nonprofit.
Yep.
There are a lot of reasons why I didn't go nonprofit, but the way that we move forward is we have to have sponsorships and donations. And I'm not, I don't have anyone bringing me to the dance. So we have to make sure that in order to keep sharing this information, people are willing, to donate so we can keep doing what we're doing.
So here is your website right here for your children. You have so many things on here. You see where you can listen live. You can actually click on it and listen live. There's all kinds of things on your website. So make sure, and Julie, you might type that in the foryourchildren.org, right? .com, we'll get that in the comments, along with the crimes of the educators, how utopians are using government schools to destroy America's children. I put that in there too. So if you want to look in the comments and find that, if you've forgotten what the name of it is, the book that Tiffany recommends that you read. And you did have Alex Newman on your show just recently.
Did. He gave a fantastic interview. Alex is such a wealth of information, and that's the thing. I'm not the only person that's saying all these same things. Jenny, you've been sharing this message for years. Rope's been sharing this message for years. The people that I have interviewed on my show have been sharing this message for years. This is nothing new. This has been going on for decades. It's just that most of us don't have all these millions of dollars behind us, and we don't have paid lobbyists courting our representatives to do the right thing for our kids. And that's the thing that's most frustrating for me. But we had an opportunity, my younger two girls and I, we went to a patriotic tea just this week, Tuesday. And we learned, information about the United States, the Declaration of Independence, and the girls and I, we had our own copy. But I highlighted a specific portion of the Declaration of Independence. And it was important because it kind of goes along with everything that we're talking about here today. And it's this: the people do have the power. They've just forgotten that they have the power.
Yep.
Yes. Well, people have to we do have God-given rights.
Exactly.
And we do not have to bow to the government.
Right.
When we should be bowing to God and taking our responsibility. With rights comes responsibility to raise our children, to educate ourselves, to just dadgummit, listen to what the enemy is telling you they're doing.
Exactly.
It's not hard.
Well, but you know what? I'm going to hop in on what you just said, though, Jules. You said that the enemy is telling us what they're doing. The problem is, just like Tiffany said earlier, parents don't see schools as the enemy. And I think this point in time, schools really are the enemy. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where schools are the enemy. I know, like you, I love teaching because it wasn't any fun anymore. I mean, there were so many things that they made you do, and the parents would say, you can't tell my kid what to do, and you're like, well, then why? But he's in my classroom, and what's the point here then?
Right.
So, until parents wake up. But the only thing, like you said, what you're doing, what we're trying to do is to give parents information
Yes.
to wake up and say, wow, if this is really going on, then I need to do something else.
Yeah, and most parents, one of the last seminars that I just did, it was a group of individuals that came, and when I started going through a lot of the information, and some of these people were retired educators. Some of these people had children that had graduated from public schools. They didn't know this information, and they said to me after the seminar, had I known this, they would have never been in public schools. Never. Had I known this, I would have done so many things differently. So I'm actually getting ready to host a seminar next week in Columbia, Tennessee, July the 20th at 6:00. If anyone is watching this and is local to the area, they can send me an email, freeyourchildren@gmail.com, and I can email them the specifics if they're interested in attending, because I don't know how it is in your area, ladies, but in the area where we live, there is a concerted effort to stop me from disseminating this information.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so there's been a lot of attempts at censorship and, trying to dissuade parents and representatives from attending the seminars, because it's going to go against the establishment, so to speak, because we know, I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, but we know that conservatives are pushing these agendas.
Yes.
They're pushing these agendas. So this information, this information isn't going to win you friends in politics, but I'm not here to win friends. I'm here to educate parents and to empower parents, and hopefully be able to find some representatives that truly do care about the children and our nation enough to say, wow, maybe I need to dig into this. Maybe I need to do a little more research. Maybe I don't need to be supporting initiatives that promote communism.
But here's the other problem that we have. People don't know what communism is.
Exactly.
They don't know what it looks like. And so when you say this is communism, they go, oh, well, you just think everything is communism. And they, they make a big thing out of it.
Right.
And it's so funny because what they're doing is indoctrination from communism. So, I mean, you're dying laughing in a way, because propaganda is huge. That's how, and all they have to do, all these lefties have to do, is start squelching out some propaganda, like you're talking about your programming, and people are coming out of the woodwork and saying this or that or the other thing. It's all propaganda, because they know that most people, it's the same reason why push cards in the mail win elections.
Right.
Same exact thing. People are lazy.
Right.
They will not do the research for themselves. They are not going to go to a candidate and talk to them themselves.
Yep.
They're not going to do anything for themselves. So when they see somebody else go, oh my gosh, he's a rhino, well, then they're going to vote for the other person. So they say, oh, Tiffany Boyd, well, she thinks everything's communism, or fill in the blank.
Exactly.
Then that's exact. And then, so these people are like, oh, I heard that about Tiffany Boyd. Oh, it's just so stupid.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I keep saying funny. I mean, ironic.
Yeah.
Because none of this is funny, frankly.
Right. Yeah.
But I remember when Julie and I and the rest of us were fighting Common Core, and their whole comment was, we need to teach kids how to critically think.
Yeah.
And I have to laugh to keep from crying. I mean, honestly, they don't even realize the irony in their own statements that they make. I mean, seriously, they say that they stand for all these things, but if you look at what they're voting for and the agendas behind what they're voting for, it's diabolical. The whole thing is diabolical. And so, I don't know how you get people to listen other than you just keep spreading the message over and over, and kind of like those push cards. Maybe if people hear it enough and see it enough, they'll say, hey, well, maybe there's something to this. And actually, I have had that happen to me recently more than once. I have had people send me messages, emails, phone calls, and they have said to me, you know what? I was a huge supporter of school choice before I started looking at the information that you were sharing. And they said, I didn't want to hear anything you had to say.
Yep.
It would make me mad, when I would see, and they said, but we took that and thought, okay, well, we're going to prove it wrong by doing some research. And then when they started doing the research, they realized, oh,
she's not wrong.
yeah, that really is, what's going on here. Maybe I need to do a little bit more research. And then they would go out and, dig up some of the many forms of information there have been out there for decades, and they would access that and read it. And that's what, I tell people. I was laughing the other day. I had this conversation with someone, and I said, I'm going to recommend some materials to you. And then in quotations, I put, and they're not my materials. So if you don't want to listen to me, fine. But I can give you lots of other people that can give you lots of the same information, but it's coming from someone different. Because for me, the goal is just to get them educated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to, what I was trying to get you to say too about, and I'm going to be more deliberate about it this time,
Sure.
about your radio program, is you spend your own money and you have to go around and find like-minded people to fund what you do.
Yes.
So if you didn't care about kids, you're not funded by the state. You don't have a state paycheck. You're not in, it's nothing like that, right?
No.
You walk away from that.
No.
So why would you do all of that then? Why would you put the money out of your own pocket? Why would you have to go walking around on bended knee trying to get people to help you? Why? I don't get it.
Exactly. Because for me, it's not about me. God laid this on my heart years ago, and my mission is to, I really feel like, I firmly believe that we are in a battle for the souls of our nation's children. Every single radio show that I do begins like that. We are in a battle for the souls of our nation's children. Yep. My cornerstone of my ministry is Ephesians 6:10-11. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. I want to give parents the encouragement that they need and the information that they need to be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. And of course, God is good and he always provides. But my whole purpose in doing this is because we are losing so many of our nation's children.
Yes, we are.
We have to do something. As a Christian, I can't just sit here and do nothing. I can't. And, this is not about money. I laughed the other day. Someone had said, well, people think that you're just raking in all of this money for your children. And I said, have they seen the vehicle that I drive? It's 22 years old. There's no money in this. I'm not doing this for political gain. I'm not a politician. I'm not a lobbyist. I have no desires or goals to be a politician. I'm trying to help as many people as possible by giving them this information so that we can try to step in and help, our children. Our nation's children are the ones that are being victimized. This is child abuse at epic proportions.
Yes.
Well, what I was on, a reporter from Washington Post contacted me one time when we were doing Common Core. Mm-hmm. And, I knew I knew who the reporter was. I'd looked her up and I knew she was a leftist. And so I knew, kind of the questions I was going to get. Mm-hmm. But it was fascinating to me because she said, so who funds you? And I said, my husband.
Yeah, that's what my husband says. I'm the funder.
And she said, what do you mean your husband funds you? And I said, well, all my gas, all the stuff that we pay for comes out of my home budget. I don't understand what you mean. What does that mean? That, how's that question? These people, and I think this is what we've got to really, really impress upon the people who are watching and the people who will be watching. Mm-hmm. How do you figure that the state somehow has your best interests in heart when it starts out by putting a gun to your head and stealing your money to fund its activities?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So if we start from that position, how can anything else be for your benefit?
Right.
Well,
amen.
And besides that, the government is the largest employer. So you're talking about, You're talking about the largest employer in every single state,
Yep.
and you're going against what
Mm-hmm.
they want, the direction they want you to go.
Yeah.
So the
And I don't
people
think a lot
that
of
are employed
right.
are limited into what they think, are bullied,
Yeah.
intimidated.
I don't think a lot of people understand how much money is involved in education. John Taylor Gatto delved into that in Weapons of Mass Instruction when he said that it is right under the pharmaceutical industry in terms of how much money is swirling around, in the education world. And when you look at that, those that create these assessments, the curriculum, there's tons and tons of money involved in all of this. And
the
I
data
think that,
collection.
yeah. And I think that people don't really realize that's why they say follow the money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And the data collection, I mean, they use that to market to your children to go against their parents.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just they know exactly what'll trip that child's emotions.
Yep.
And it's against family. It's against God.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
And I think that's the thing that parents need to really look at. And parents, as you're looking at things and you're taking this in, the state isn't the state has no religion other than money, right? That's it.
Right.
So, I mean, especially if you're Christian, you need to look at organizations like Rope and like Free Your Children, who, and Monica Klein and all of our other guests that put Christ at the center of their lives. And if that's the only reason that we're doing it, doesn't it somehow make sense that maybe we have your best interest at heart and not the state?
Right. I said the other day, if you're expecting a politician to come with the answers and fix this, you're going to be, sadly upset. In the end, it's going to come from grassroots organizations. It's not going to come from these big, huge, multi-million-dollar or $1 million organizations that have lobbyists and once the money starts swirling around, people tend to change. Yeah, people tend to change, where their allegiances lie.
Yes, I always warn people. It's like if it's a national organization, you better look.
Yes.
Look closely and beware.
Yeah.
Because they will, and as soon as they start having the big dogs show up, it gets it's just kind of, it's like it reminds me of the snake in the Jungle Book.
Oh yeah.
Just so mesmerizing. Plus you get money. Money's always fun,
Right.
Yeah.
Not always. But
it's and you spoke about the data collecting and we've spoken about CRT and all these things. Well, a lot of people don't realize that the data collecting, one of the ways that they're doing that is through the SEL. It's through the SEL programs that are being implemented across the nation. And then, of course, when the ESSER funding came through, in order to receive the ESSER funding, you had to make sure that you were propagating an SEL program. And then what's really concerning me, people are like, oh, well, we'll just opt out. Well, what they don't realize is the government had a plan before you even knew that they had a plan. So, a lot of this curriculum now, what's happening is the parents can't come in and look at the curriculum because it's generated in real time. So as the child is working on this digital curriculum, there's no way to look at it ahead of time because it hasn't been generated yet. It's generated depending on, the child's responses or how they score on their digital assessments. And so there's no way to see what's really going on. And they can say what they want to say and they can pass laws all they want to, but you have no idea what's really going on in that classroom with your children.
Right. And it's been going on for so long that people don't recognize it because it's so familiar.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't seem abnormal.
Right.
It's like that when I was the public school parent that was always there, and we had an organization, and I was the one that always had the questions. And I would say something, and the answer that came to just send chills up my spine was, well, what's wrong with that?
Yep.
And I'm like,
or we've been doing it like that forever or something like that.
And I mean, they're crafty at what they do. They wrap it up in nice, pretty little packages, innovative school models and community schools and school choice. I mean, they all sound really great. They're great at their marketing, and parents just take it for face value, and they don't realize what's behind it. And so it's our goal. It's Free Your Children's goal. I know it's Rope's goal to try to get parents to say, listen, it may sound good, but this is what it's really doing. This is what's behind it.
Right. If it's got chocolate on the top, you can't see what's underneath.
That's right.
There could be dog poop under there.
Exactly.
And they take, I mean, one of the things, and not that we're all that in a bag of chips, but the school choice people used parent empowerment, just happens to be our name, to promote the getting into homeschools and private schools in red states and people. Oklahoma's got the best school choice now.
Right.
Yeah.
The best.
Right. And I don't think people understand that, Julia, that you already have choice. You can homeschool, public school, or private school.
But again, or
without government. And that's the choice they're eliminating.
Exactly.
Without government.
Yes.
But so many of us are useful idiots. We've been propagandized and trained in our public schools to just, follow the line. And if they say we don't have choice, then we don't. And what they did was, I think in that particular scheme, the school choice scheme, what they did to get conservatives on board is they started telling people, well, it's your money. You should get it back.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
And you're like, okay, wait, at what point was it your money after they got it?
Exactly. That, I said this not long ago. I said, education is the only government department where I see people demanding their money back. I said, at the end of the year, do you go down to the local fire station and say you want your money back if you didn't call the fire department? Do you ask the parks, the National Park Service, or the state, the state parks for your money back if you didn't go to the park?
I love that.
It's not your money once you pay it into the government. The key here is they shouldn't be getting our money to begin with. So why aren't you promoting things like tax reform where they don't take our money to begin with?
Well,
and I promote voluntary taxation. That's the only way we'll ever have government the right size. The only way. If you want government to provide a service, you can pay the government for that service.
Right.
Well, the other way they got us here in Oklahoma and is by telling us that it was a tax credit.
Oh yeah.
And here's the thing. Conservatives are such useful idiots. I mean, we really honestly are. We think we know what we're talking about, but if they use certain buzzwords, then we're just like falling asleep going, oh yeah, it's our money. We want it back.
Yep.
It's a tax credit. A credit is good. They get these glazed over eyes. A tax credit is good. Yay. Exactly. All tax credits. I mean, it's crazy.
And we keep saying boomerang money always comes with strings. If it goes into the government and comes back to you, they own you. They are going to tell you how to do it, what to do it with, when to do it. You're going to answer to them. And, I said this, Jenny and Julia, the other day. I said, this is school choice in a nutshell. You can have a car, but it has to be a red car. Yeah. You can have a sandwich, but it has to be a bologna. In the South, we call it bologna. You can have a sandwich, but it has to be a bologna or a bologna sandwich. They're not giving. What they're doing is they're taking your choice away, and it destroys what it does is it makes all forms of education public. So it destroys true private education. Right. The government then has its fingers in all forms of education. And someone said to me the other day, they said, listen, I see what you're saying. And they said, if public schools, government schools aren't working for your children and you want to pull them out and you want to put them in a different avenue of education, whether it be homeschool or public school, how are you going to do that if the government is then funding those too? There's nowhere to escape.
Thank you.
They're the same.
But they don't get it. And here's the other thing they'll tell you too, because this is another one that just kills me. They will on one hand argue for free enterprise,
Mhm.
and then on the other hand, they'll tell you that schools don't have to take the money.
Exactly.
So you're like, okay, but wait a second. So we left free enterprise, and this school over here takes the money and is able to buy a new building and get more people, but then this school doesn't. So
Right.
really, I mean, honestly, people who
Yeah.
think they're conservative, really, I mean, unless you question them, they have no idea
No.
what they think conservatism is. But
No.
you can't be okay with free enterprise and then not think that the government handing out money to everybody is going to keep somebody from, going, oh, I won't take that then.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, people see money. They see money.
Yep.
They just lose their minds. And
Yes.
I try to get them to stop and consider this. What's more important, money or your freedom? Money or your freedom? It's like
And
a
how many
scale.
people today would say money?
Exactly.
Money.
Exactly.
Money is freedom.
Yeah. Except for when it's coming from the government, right?
That's what I think.
But it's our
that's
money.
not what most people think.
Right.
It's our
Jenny.
money. Yeah. It's just our money.
All right, we're gonna have to wind it up because we're already 16 minutes over. I knew that was.
It's
You
been a
can't have
pleasure.
Tiffany Boyd on and not go over.
That's right. We have a lot to say, and we just barely scratched the surface, right?
Yes. Well, that's the truth.
I have a feeling the three of us could probably keep going for a week.
Yes,
Probably,
I agree.
yes.
Honestly, Tiffany, it's been such a blessing to have you on, and give your spiel one more time about the radio show and I'm going to put up your
Yes, the radio show airs every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central Time on WXRQ AM. You can stream it. You can find the live stream link over on my Facebook page, freeyourchildren.com. You can also find previously aired shows on my Spotify channel, Free Your Children. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So, and you can email me too at freeyourchildren@gmail.com if you have any questions. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be a guest on your show today, ladies. Thank you so much.
Well, we've got to stick together.
You.
Absolutely.
I knew we would love having you.
Well, I love Rope, and I support what you do with your wonderful organization. And you're right, Jenny, we're stronger together in numbers. And,
Right.
I'm one of the many things I want to do with Free Your Children is to connect all of us so that we can all work together to try to preserve our freedoms.
Yeah.
Take the public. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Tiffany, I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Well, thank you so much.
Don't go too far. Oh, and by the way,
Yep.
for our friends in Tennessee,
Jenny was just in Tennessee and got the T-shirt.
I had to get that shameless plug in.
That's right. Well, thank you so much.
Take care, and then we'll talk to you soon. And because, like I said, I think we'll have you on yet even again. So have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
All right.
ladies.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was what I expected it to be, which was super, super informative. She is such a good interview, isn't she?
She is. That was so great. We could easily have talked for a week. I have no doubt.
Okay, so you and I need to talk about something really fast before we get off of here. So we were going to have Josh Brakeen, our congressman, on for to talk about lots of different things, but we wanted to kind of talk to him about our fight with Common Core and drag that back out into the open again, and have him talk.
He was our Senate author for our Common Core repeal bill, and
he was the star of the show. Yeah. So he's going to be on the 19th, which is next Wednesday. But everybody, those of you who are still on listening and those of you who are catching us later, if you want to catch us live on that show, you're going to have to come in at 8 and not at 9 because Josh's schedule is only going to allow him to be on at 8 our time. So if make sure if you want to be on live, you join us at 8 and not 9 for that one. But we will see Josh on Wednesday. So we're excited about that. And then do we schedule a guest for the 21st yet?
Still pending. We'll talk about that Wednesday.
Oops. So
The
this is
21st
now you.
is so long ago when I started and so close now, but I've still got 3 people to call. So yes,
Okay. All right. So we will
we
have
will.
we will have some kind of a guest.
Yes.
Hopefully before we go too much further, we will have a guest. So
I'll
thank
get
you so
out
much
to
for
get
being
off.
with us today. And we always love, we always appreciate everybody who joins us, and we just appreciate you sharing what we do, because again, you know, we have to go out and find sponsors and pay for it often out of our own pocket. So make sure you're listening to those of us who are self-funding and not those who are funding from the money
From
that they
UNESCO.
they steal from you. So thanks again. Have a great weekend, and then we will see you again on Wednesday. And make sure to join us live an hour earlier